I have a turnout that needs to be replaced on my layout. I thought you might be interested in how I do that. The first thing I have to determine is where I'm going to cut it loose. That's not necessarily going to be exactly where I joined the turnout to the track when I laid it. So let's develop a plan. The first thing I notice is that this turnout connects directly to my bridge. So the only place that I can separate it is where I originally attached it. So to do this, I'm going to need to cut back, further back on each of these rails, then lift it up. Then when I heat the solder by the rail joiners up here, I can just pull it out. But as we come over to this one, now over here on my siding, I have a separate block. The power back here is on a different switch. That's why the plastic rail joiner here. Now over here I had a plastic rail joiner, but when I did some soldering, it of course melted and came out, leaving me a gap here. As you see, I soldered a piece of wire over. That's because this point right here was not picking up the power properly from this track. Whenever the point got dirty, the power couldn't get through, so I needed to power it from back here. So I put I soldered this piece of wire across here to take power all the way out through the point. And yet, because this one still has the isolated joint, I can still cut power back here. I mean, all of the power's here. The positive's over here, the negative won't be coming through, and the engine will stop back there when I cut the power. Now, back over here, you can see the actual joint right here, but I don't have to cut it there. I can cut it anywhere back along here, and then just put another piece of track onto my new turnout, and then join it anywhere along here. Over here, I think I'm going to do the same thing, because this piece of track right here is not flex track. This is actually a particular radius track, and I have another piece of that, so I can actually cut it back here and not worry about this mess that I made here, or this, and then I can put a rail joiner in here and solder it, but just leave a tiny gap right here and fill it with maybe some a goop or other type of glue that will make sure that there's no arcing across any gap that I leave there. So that's the plan. The first thing I have to do before I can do that, as you can see over here at my turnout, there is a hole where the actuating rod comes up from underneath under the table switch motor. So I'll put this piece of plastic. It's just a little piece of foam I cut from some foam board, and that way when I tear out the ballast all around my turnout, I won't get any down into the hole and into my switch motor. If you've seen my video clinic on ballasting flex track, you know that I use a glue of 2 parts water to 1 part white glue to hold my ballast in place. So to take it out, because the white glue dries brittly, it should snap right apart. I've got a couple of picks here that I can use to just take it apart, and I also have a small vacuum because I don't want the ballast getting all over the place. So I'll begin by just tearing it out. As you can see, it should break loose very easily. I'm not going to worry too much about getting the ballast in between the rails, because once I free it on the outside, it's going to come up fairly easily in the middle. I don't care if that ballast remains in between the rails, because the old turnout is going to be thrown away. So just continue to break this loose and vacuum up as you go. This is an almost complete layout. And I don't want to be hunting for chunks of ballast all over the place. So I will continue breaking all of this out back as far as I need to go, all around and all the way up here. And when I get ready to take it out, we'll start the next section. I've finished scraping the ballast away from the edge of the track, all around where I'm going to cut. Now, when this is flex tracks through here, so when I cut back here, I want to cut fairly close to where the track is being held in place by the old ballast. Over here it doesn't make any difference because this is all one piece of track and the radius in it is built in. So I can cut that anywhere in here. And of course I'm not cutting over here. This is going to be separated using a soldering iron. For cutting the rail, I'm using Dremel, and I always use the Dremel on one of these cables because it allows you to cut straight down like this, getting a perpendicular cut. You can't do that with the cutting wheel on the big one because it will force you to cut in at an angle like this, and we don't want an angle, we want it straight. So I'll make my first cut right here. Okay, it doesn't matter if you cut into the road bed underneath, because all that's glued in place and it'll stay right there. Everything will be fine. Now this one, looks like my bridges are a little bit in my way for cutting at this angle. Let me make sure I don't tear up my telephone lines, and I'll cut here. Alright. I also want to make sure I get not just through the rail, but through the plastic that joins the ties underneath. Okay. Put that aside. And I've got a palette knife. These are $3 at Hobby Lobby. They have all different kinds. This one I'm going to slide under here. And bring up. Oh, by the way, I should mention that before you do this part, you should check to make sure you don't have any rail nails through the ties holding it down. I had one over here, which I've removed. And as soon as we get this end free, okay, as you see, it picks right up. Well, I guess I do have a nail in there because I can feel it holding. I don't know where it is. I couldn't see it from the top. But I can certainly feel it. There it is, right there. And I cannot see it from the top. I don't know how it got there. So we'll put this under it and see if we can push it through. Nope, I just bent it. Okay, so we're all through here now, and the next step will be to heat this and pull it out. Alright, I'm ready to melt the solder. I have to be careful here. I've got a plastic fence here I don't want to melt. I've got a plastic bridge here I don't want to melt. This dwarf light is made of painted brass. It should be alright. I've already knocked the target off my switch stand here. Fortunately, I have lots of others. But the soldering was all done on the outside, not on the inside. So we will begin. By the way, it will be my purpose to try and move this out and leave the rail joiners attached to the bridge rails. That is what I'm going to try to do. If I don't do it, it'll just make things a little longer when I get to join back later, but I'm going to try. You'll also notice I'm using a very pointed soldering tip. So we'll run it along here. The angle that's through here. Looks like my rail is coming loose a little bit from my bridge, which can be fixed with a little glue. But I'm wiggling my left hand back and forth, getting this to come loose. Okay, you see that broke loose a little bit there, and now we'll get this, we'll bend it back the other way this time and get it to break loose a little bit there. A little bit farther that way, and then a little bit farther that way, and then a little bit farther this way. Each time trying to be fast enough to get to it before it sets up too much. And I hope my hands are out of the way to show you what's going on, but it's gradually coming loose. And there we go. And as you can see here, the joiners are off here and they're still on down here. Now what we're going to do is try and draw some of that extra solder out. And the way I'm going to do that, let me get my tools over here. I have a wet cloth for cleaning my end, the end of my soldering tip, and I have some flux. And I'm going to put a little flux here on this joiner because I'm going to try to reuse it. Not because joiners are expensive, but because it might be easier. Now this one looks pretty good. I don't know if you can see it in there, but it looks pretty open. So what I'm going to do now is use my soldering iron to draw the solder onto the iron. Yeah, it looks like that's working pretty well. Now, go back and clean my tip. And get that back in there, like that. Okay, as you can see, this bridge rail has come loose. We'll just put a little glue on to glue that back down. Also, I'm going to want to clear all of this ballast off from here. And to do that, I have another palette knife I got for $3 at Hobby Lobby, and it will come right off. As you see, just like that. Now, one thing that I want to do now, while I have my soldering iron out and hot, is I want to test my new turnout and see if it fits in here. If it doesn't, we'll try to remove these and use new rail joiners. So I have my new turnout, and it will slide into here like that. Let's make sure I get it in both of them. Okay. And then, as you can see, we'll need to attach new pieces here and here to join over here. So my next step is to paint my ties and my rails to match the what I have on my layout already. And so we'll do that next. I've decided that I don't like the look of these rail joiners left on, so I'm going to remove those and put new ones on the end of my turnout. You see I've already put them on, and we'll remove these the same way. It's just that it's going to be easier. We'll grab a hole right here and put this in here. Be careful not to melt your plastic. And off it comes. And because I want to put new ones on there, we'll also want to slide this in and thin out that solder as much as possible. Remember, there's no solder on the inside. And we'll go again from here. And off it comes. So we'll run this. I can't really see over there, but there wasn't near as much solder on that side. So now the actuating arm from my switch motor is right there, and it will be seated down inside a hole in my out at the end of my points for the lever arm there, so that I would be able to put these on like this and set it down over that post. So now we'll go back to painting the turnout and the extra pieces of rail that we're going to put in. Alright, I still haven't painted my turnout, but I thought while I had the camera set up I would do this. Now I put two pieces on the end of my new turnout, and I got the length by making them about 1 inch longer than the pieces that were on the old turnout. And you can see here I've cut away the ties I also have cut away the ties in here where I joined them, and we will put some more ties under it before we ballast. But for right now, I'm going to get my lengths on where to cut them. So we'll insert this where it goes. And as you'll notice, I've offset, instead of sitting on top, I've set them on the sides. And I will go here and I will mark it back on this side, because I'm going to cut out the red mark. Now on this one I'm going to put it on the other side, because remember, I want a gap here. I want this one to be close, but I want a definite gap here, because this line is on a separate power. And we'll get this one and do the same way. We'll mark it here, so that when I cut that out, they should go flush. Also remember here, it's better to cut it too long than too short, because you can always cut it again. But if it's a little short, it's not that important. What happens when you have that little gap, it gives the rail somewhere to expand. I know I was showing my layout at a show, and it's covered with an acrylic top, and it got so hot in here that the rails expanded, didn't have anywhere to go, and the rails in this bridge snapped up and kinked, and that was the end of my show. So it doesn't hurt to have a little gap in there. It's not exactly prototype, but then it does make the cars go clickety-clack when they go over it. So the next thing to do is to cut those ends off. So I'll get my Dremel. Alright, now I'm trying to make them a little bit flat with the Dremel. The next thing we need to do is take a file and file the edges. Right up here on the rail on both sides, so there are no burrs. And on the bottom, get the burrs from there. Get them filed all over. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, looks like I have this one just right. It's up nice and close here with a gap over here. This one appears to be, well, it's going to need to bend a little bit, but it appears as though this one is a tad too long, which I can fix. So I'll get the burrs in a minute. I just want to check the length. See if I have it now. And now we have it. Okay. So I have my length correct. And the next thing I'll need to do is we'll put the joiners on our ends, not on this one. 1, 2, 3 joiners, and we'll push them all the way back so that I can set this down flat, and then we'll slide them onto this. But to do that, I need to remove this last tie in each space. And make sure you get the plastic out from underneath it too. It appears I'm wearing the wrong glasses. There we go. Again, remember some of the ties have plastic running under the rails, and that has to be gone because that's where the rail joiner has to slide. And I've taken the rail off, but that's why I have a gauge. So we'll get that finished and get all of the plastic out from under here, so that I can put my rail joiners on the end, slide this in, slide this down, then push the rail joiners over to the other rail. And before we solder, we'll use our gauge to make sure the gauge is correct, and if it isn't, then we'll use rail nails to hold it in the correct position before we solder. Okay, we're ready to place the turnout that I've in here, but before I do, I'd like to have a short little recap over what we've done so far. Now, the first thing we did was we made a plan, and that plan was that we were going to cut it here, melt the solder here, and pull it out that way. So the first step was to remove the ballast. The second step was to cut the track. The third step was to melt the solder at this joint here, then wiggle it until it pulled out. Then we removed the ballast that remained on top of the road bed. Then we attached the track pieces here and here. Then we laid it down and measured them and cut them correctly. And then I weathered the track, the rails. Then I weathered it. You can see where I've rusted the sides of the rails, and also the ties are no longer black plastic. They are underneath and on the sides, but remember, when you're coloring the the ties. It's only necessary to do the top because on either side of them and on the edges it's going to be all ballast. So when we get ready to put it in, I've attached these are soldered onto one end, the rail joiners here. The rail joiners here have been pushed all the way back. In other words, I've removed the ties so that I can push the rail joiners all the way back. That way it can fit straight down in. So I also want to point out that over here, this is where this part of the track is going to be, and I can't put ballast in there because it will get in the way of the actuating lever there. So I've gone ahead and painted this light and dark gray. Using light and dark gray, I painted that so whatever shows through will look similar to the ballast. So get these glasses and slip this on. And right here I need to push this over, and I'm going to the actuating arm for the switch motor under there. I'm going to put that over top of it. It has some play in it, and it fits very closely. It's a tight fit, but it does fit. There we go. Now we have the actuating arm is in there. Push these in here. We'll line these up. And when they're lined up, we'll push the joiner so that it grabs the other rail. Let's try this one. See, I don't have any ties in here to hold them up. Okay, I've got that one on. Push that back a little and try again. Going to grab a screwdriver here and see if I can keep this up. Did I get it? Yes, I did. That helped. Now we have one more to go. Ew! What did I do? Look at that, I shoved it all the way up to here. And that is one of the difficult parts of this. You push and it doesn't go anywhere, so you push harder, and now look what I've got. So, let me work on removing that. You're not going to be able to see anyway because my head is in the way, and I'll come back just as soon as I have that rail joiner in a position. Okay, I've slid the rail joiner back up here. Now it's on this side, and I'm going to try to put it on here. Now, let's try it this way. I think I need more of a point. Yep. Now it's gone all the way back. So we'll try one more time. Okay. I've got it on there partially, and I'm just afraid to put any more pressure on it. Okay. Now I'm going to feel over here to make sure that everything is in right. Okay. Feel over here to make sure everything is in right. All right. So, I have to check through here to make sure I don't have any kinks. I also have my gauge. The two little nubs up here are supposed to fit inside the track. And you're not going to be able to see in there, but I can see that they go right through. Okay? And of course the rail joiners are doing their job of keeping the track straight. Now the thing that I want to avoid here is a kink. I was afraid there might be a kink here, but it doesn't look like that I have one. So before I solder it though, I want to put a railroad car on there and see how they travel. Alright, I've got the car on here, and I'll bring it through. And it runs smoothly. Smooth as can be. Alright. And so, my next step is going to be to put some ties underneath the open spaces. I've removed these ties from the piece that was the old piece that was in here, and let me see how many I'm going to need. I have 4 here, but it looks like I'm only going to need 3. Yes. So I'll cut this. Like that. And also notice that I have, I guess you can't see it, but all of the little pieces of plastic that represented rail nails that hold the rail to these ties, I've cut them off so that this can slide under. Let's make sure I have the short side on the inside of the curb. Now let's try to slide these in without pulling up that tree over there. spaced properly. They're hanging up right here in my little gap that I left. Okay. And down here again, I think I have 3. Let's put this up and be sure. Yes, I have 3. Slide them under here. Okay. Now you can, some people glue the rails to the ties that I'm placing in. I don't see the necessity since I'm going to ballast it anyway. You'll also know that even though I slid this particular rail joiner all the way back, this rail is still being held down. So it evidently went in between the little rail nails that hold down the rail and the rail. So that's still in good shape. And I need one more rail over here, and I just cut one off. So I'll place it in there. And now I'm ready to solder. Alright, before I get the soldering ready, you'll notice this is not lining up exactly correct. So I've got a track nail. Track nail has a round head. A rail nail has just a little hook from one off to one side. But I've got gonna move this over so that these rails line up. Put this in the hole right here. Now, better have my hammer ready. Okay, there it is. All right. Okay, and now we can get ready to solder. All right, after getting the nail in, I've got a train on here, and as you can see, it runs over it quite nicely. So we're all set. We're going to start soldering. I want you to notice that you keep the end of the tip of your soldering iron tinned at all times. If you don't do this, eventually in a small tip like this, it's going to eat it away. And this particular tip cost me $9 at Granger's. So I don't like to throw them away. I've been using this one for 4.5 years now. So if you keep your tip tinned at all times, it'll last a lot longer. So now I'm going to heat my soldering iron, and we'll solder some of those rail joiners. I like to use paste flux. The reason I like the paste is because I can tell exactly where it is, and it stays exactly where I put it. If you unknowingly have a liquid flux somewhere, your solder might jump to where it is, it'll follow the flux, and you might end up with solder where you don't want it. So that's why I choose the paste type flux. Now that doesn't mean that the other isn't any good. I know lots of fine modelers who use the liquid flux, but evidently they are more adept at applying it than I am. So we'll just put a little on our joints, just on the outside. And after you apply it, wipe off the top, because I don't want any of the solder getting on top of the rail. And by the way, remember, we're not soldering this one. If you have any problems with them not lining up, you can use track nails like I did, and that solved my problem. But you can also use rail nails to hold it on either side, or you can use CA glue to glue it down. But if you're going to glue to these newly placed ties, then you need to glue them down first, then glue that, so that you have a good lineup. And remember, you only solder on the outside of the track. So I'll hold my soldering, and of course that will melt the flux. And we'll put a little down there, and that's it. They're soldered together. And over here, I guess I better do this left-handed. But again, we'll melt the flux, and then, well, I'm having a little trouble getting at it. And rub it. Rub this over the top too. Okay. And we'll do this one over here. Melt the flux. And continue, and I'll do the other side. You won't be able to see me doing that side, so I'll rejoin you when I've finished soldering my rail joiners. And it's time to test my locomotive. So I have my F7A and B units on, and we'll bring them through across one joint and across the next. We'll reverse it and go reverse through those joints. Okay. And this time, after we go through, I'll hit my switch and we'll back into the siding. And I will now cut the power to that siding and see if power is cut. Yes, I'm turning up and nothing's happening, and it won't until I turn the power back on to that section, and then off we go. So now it looks like we're ready to ballast. I have a clinic on ballasting, but doing a turnout is a little different because you don't want any glue or any ballast to get in here to foul the action of your points. So to do that, we basically put the ballast over here and brush it this way. Now I'm going to be stopping, the actuating arm goes across through here, the little arm that pulls the points, and then there's a piece that holds it together here and here. Well, I'm going to stop at that point with my ballast, and when I put the glue on, a little bit will go under, but none should come over to this. If it should happen to, the glue I'm using dries brittle and it can break loose and it will still work. Remember I told you before that before I placed this turnout in, I painted the roadbed a couple of shades of gray underneath here to be similar to the ballast I'm going to be using. I use Woodland Scenic's medium ballast. This is the gray, light and the gray mix, light and medium gray mix. And in with that, you can see the little pieces of iron ore in there to represent quartz. If you haven't figured out by now, I do scale and N scale, and medium ballast is normally not used by N scalers. I use it because I like the results. As you can see down here, I think, although it's not very prototype, a man 3/8 of an inch tall would find one of these pieces of ballast as big as his hand. But that doesn't bother me. What I like to see is the texture that you get with this medium, and this works great for me, and this is my layout. So the tools that I have are the medium ballast mix, my brush, some glue. This is white glue, 2-to-1 water to white glue. And I'm applying it with an eyedropper because it's such a small space. And I have a spoon to use to get my ballast where I want it to go. I don't want ballast all over the place here. This is a finished layout. So, to begin with, we have to do small amounts. I start with the center first. Just get it down. I want to fill up between the ties, but I don't want any on top of the ties. Any that I get on top of the ties, I will just have to take out later. So let's just, I'm a little light there, I'm a little light there. And run it through. Okay. Now we'll get a little more. Again, because I'm working in a small area, I'm not filling my spoon, I'm just using tiny bits of it. And now just a tiny bit of the other side of the turnout. So as you see, we've left this area clear right here on either side of the actuating arm. Now we're going to fill this just like that. We'll take this and knock it off the top of the ties. And we have ourselves a nice round mound. Just pour it right on top of them and then take it off with the brush. And put just a little more right here, just a tiny bit more, and some in here. And again, go back and take it off the top of the ties and let it fall down. You may notice my roadbed doesn't extend out past my ties. I feel you get a much more natural looking fall on the ballast if you let the ballast make the fall and not that bevel that came with the cork roadbed. I don't find that to be as natural. Now this way uses less roadbed. I only, instead of having the double piece of roadbed under mine, I only have a single piece, so I use a lot less roadbed, but I use more ballast. But I don't think ballast is all that expensive, so I don't worry about it. All I'm worried about is how it looks. Okay, and that's the general procedure. I'm going to finish with the ballast and be right back with you. Okay, I've finished with my laying all the ballast. Now I have my 2-to-1 water to white glue, and it also has a little bit of dishwashing liquid in it. Especially I use Dawn because of the emulsifier. The degreaser is a good emulsifier, and what I'm trying to do here is keep the watery glue from beading. I want it to sink into the ballast and spread. I don't want it beading up and rolling down the hills that I've made here. Take the trouble to make those nice falls and then have your glue roll downhill. Okay, and always put the glue on the top of the fall. I just follow right along the rail and let gravity do the work. Just put the glue on the top and it will work its way down to the bottom. Again, on the top. And let it work its way down. You may notice that the ballast that I have here is a lot lighter than the ballast on the rest of the layout, and that's because I have used a gray chalk to weather the other part of the layout, the other ballast. And again, when we get up close to that actuating arm, we're careful not to go beyond. So I will continue to do this and be back to show you the finished product. I like to let my ballast dry for 24 hours before I start messing with it. I have some tools here to use. Got a pick for scraping along the insides, and I have a couple of blades. The big flat one for going in to uncover any ties I've covered, and this one to run up the center of the rail here. Now it looks like I did a fairly good job of ballasting. As a matter of fact, I see a couple of places where I may want to go back and put just a little more ballast in. But if we scrape this along here to break loose any pieces, and I'm not getting any, you can feel them as you go. And if you miss any, your locomotive will find them, and then you can go in and knock them out. You can see that I have some pieces of ballast out in here that I'm going to want to vacuum as soon as I break them loose, and that's a little picky thing. Or I could just put some green chalk over top of them and leave them there. So it looks to me like everything is good. One of the things you want to watch for is in between here. If there's anything in there, it will cause your cars to derail. And I'm not seeing anything. Nice and careful. Okay, now what do we do about the color of the ballast? For that, I use AIM Adventures in Miniature weathering powder. This is the medium. Is it medium gray? No, it's light gray. And I will take that and I will dip my brush. This is the same brush that I used to move the ballast around, and I'll just put it in. Now the chalk goes on heavy in some places and lighter in others, and that makes it look more natural. It isn't all the same. But now we're getting the weathered ballast. And so now it's blending in. I think I need just a little bit more back here. So take the vacuum and there you have it. One other thing I did, but I didn't do on camera, was, as I mentioned before, I put a little gob of glue in my space here. That's really not going to hold anything. The nail, the track nail that I put in there, and the joiner that's holding this side, and the fact that this particular piece is not flex track. It's actually designed to be this radius. That's going to hold it in line. Of course, in the future, if anything goes awry, either here or here or here, that's where you use your rail nails to push in and push it where it needs to go. But I'm not anticipating any problems. I've already run my locomotives and they go through just fine. I will find any pieces of ballast that need to be picked up later on as I run my trains, and I hope you have enjoyed this.